This podcast is powered by the pros at Paschal Air Plumbing and Electric. Arkansas owned, Arkansas operated. GoPaschal.com.
Kyle Youmans, DallasCowboys.com, Talking Cowboys podcast now joins us here on the Morning Rush. Kyle, appreciate you joining us, man. I know you had a chance to catch up with Jerry Jones recently, and some of his comments made that he clarified with you. Cedarius Lamb, his contract negotiation is a big deal right now in the National Football League for a lot of Cowboy fans listening. Just kind of what's the latest on that and possibly the other negotiations with Micah Parsons and Dak Prescott too?
Yeah, guys, thanks for having me. I think yesterday, like you said, Jerry did a nice job of turning those comments that he made earlier in the week around. If you listen to the full quote, he's talking about how contracts are different whenever there's players under contract and then a holdout happens, as opposed to talking to players that are outside of their contract. So with that being said, he really talked about how the numbers come together years ahead of time as opposed to years in the past or the upcoming year. And so he kind of went into he said he got himself in a little bit of trouble earlier in the week when he said there was no urgency to sign CeeDee Lamb. And I think in his initial quote, it sounded like he wasn't dishing on CeeDee Lamb, saying the Dallas Cowboys don't need CeeDee Lamb. He was mostly saying he was saying CeeDee Lamb doesn't need the Dallas Cowboys, just based on the fact that he's going to be ready. He still has a month until the season opener. He has plenty of time to ramp up, and he knows the offense. He doesn't need these extra reps. He's one of the best in the NFL, and he's not worried that CeeDee Lamb won't be ready when it matters most. What he was really saying is that he doesn't need to be out on the field right this second. He doesn't need the reps in Oxnard. He doesn't need to be there in terms of the preseason game. So every time that conversation comes up about Jerry and no urgency, it really is a moot point, because there is urgency to sign CD. Of course, he wants him to get him signed so that way he's a Dallas Cowboy for an extended period of time. But there's no urgency right this second because he doesn't want him to get hurt in the preseason. There's no real need to put him on the practice field before he's ready. And he's going to need a ramp-up period later, but at the same time, he's been working out and getting things rolling. So definitely an interesting back and forth, but I think yesterday kind of finished off that conversation, at least for a little bit. And then once we get into the later parts of the preseason and maybe even later this week in terms of the regular season, the training camp practices, maybe those contract talks will start to heat back up.
Kyle, you're obviously around it in a very close way. For the rest of us from the outside looking in, Cowboy fans really wonder about long term. Is Dak Prescott going to be the quarterback? What's your read on this? Is it there's obviously a lot of speculation about whether or not he's going to be the quarterback long term, but just what's your take on that?
I think just from being, like you said, being in that locker room and being around this team, there's such a high level of respect for Dak between the front office and the players and the coaching staff and even the media around this team. I mean, Dak is the ultimate leader. And I know from the outside looking in, you look at what he's done in the postseason, and it hasn't necessarily come to fruition. But, I mean, look outside of Patrick Mahomes right now in the NFL and find me a quarterback who has a favorable postseason record. That's not to give an excuse to Dak. That's not to throw everything else out the window. But, I mean, he was second in MVP voting last year, and he's a leader on your football team more so than maybe some of the guys that you've had in the past. I mean, I talked to a guy a couple days ago who has been with the organization over 25 years, and he told me Dak Prescott is the best leader that he's ever seen in any sport, anything that he's covered, and especially around the Dallas Cowboys. He said he's the best leader. So with all of those elements, I mean, the fact that he's playing better, the fact that he takes care of the football like he did in 2023, he was second in MVP voting, and then you tack on the leadership ability. I don't think there's a way they let him walk. And I know the money is interesting just because at some point you're going to have to make a move if postseason success isn't necessarily there. I don't think Dak is that move. I think they're going to get it done. I think he's going to be a Cowboy for maybe an extended period of time. I don't want to necessarily say for life because we've seen it before where even some of the best players in Cowboys history will go off and play a season or two with another franchise. I just don't see a world where in 2025 and 2026, Dak Prescott isn't wearing a star on the side of his helmet. I just think he's too ingrained in this organization for them to have any legitimate reason to let him walk.
Kyle, you mentioned Oxnard earlier. What's training camp like out there?
Well, I mean, right now it's a little early. I mean, the sun's just now coming up out here on the West Coast, and the good thing about it is, I mean, I'm looking down at my watch, and it's 61 degrees this morning, and so that's the biggest thing about Oxnard. That's the biggest thing about the West Coast is the fact that you have just the unbelievable weather, and they're going to get some great work in today on 2 natural grass fields, or maybe not today, but tomorrow. They've got the day off today following the preseason game. But tomorrow they get back to work on the natural grass fields. It's all such a close-knit environment. There's basically a residence inn that is building by building, room by room, that takes up this big campus in Oxnard that it's right next to the practice field. So from the furthest point of the camp, which is the cafeteria where players and staff are fed, from the furthest point to the practice field, which is the opposite point, the longest walk you could possibly have is about 3.5 minutes.
Oh, wow.
So just the convenience of being in this camp and being around this environment is phenomenal. And then, of course, in between you have the buildings for the meeting spaces. You have coaches' rooms, you have coaching offices that players have full access to whenever they want it. So the meetings, the rooms, and then the actual cafeteria and field all within those 3.5 minutes. I just don't see a better setup in terms of training camp and the way they're able to get this work in.
Kyle Youmans is again our guest, Talking Cowboys podcast, DallasCowboys.com, does a lot of pre- and post-game stuff for there. Kyle, I know that Jerry's often asked about his Dallas Cowboys, but you're around him enough to know that he has a love and admiration for his college, the Arkansas Razorbacks. What can you maybe tell us on some insight on how much Jerry cherishes the Arkansas Razorbacks?
It's funny. We were even having the conversation last week with Jerry, and he was talking about the new era of the SEC, and you could hear just how excited he was to have some almost Southwest Conference rivalries back in the fold, right, with Texas and Oklahoma, and having them. I mean, I know Oklahoma was never in the Southwest Conference, but just to have that old feel, that old rivalry between those two again. He's so excited about it, and he's always an Arkansas Razorback, man. He through and through, he bleeds the red, he bleeds the white, and he. It's funny because we also were talking about how it hasn't really turned into Razorbacks becoming Cowboys. It just hasn't necessarily come to fruition outside of a couple draft picks over the last 20 years. Just the fact that the Razorbacks have had so many NFL prospects and these guys that have come to the league and had some success, and the Cowboys only have 2 or 3 to actually have under their belt is really interesting just because of how much Jerry does love Arkansas. And I mean, his family's out there. I know there's a lot of excitement around the SEC schedule this year and what you guys are going to bring to the table there too.
I know people are excited about the Texas game, as Jerry Jones is probably as well. Well, Kyle, it's 6 o'clock there, so we appreciate you waking up early with us this morning and giving us an insight on kind of what's going on with the Dallas Cowboys in training camp right now.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. Thanks for having me. We'll talk soon.
61 degrees, guys. Doesn't sound too bad.
BetOnline is your #1 source for all your betting needs. Get the latest odds, lines, and matchup reports for baseball, boxing, golf, and more. BetOnline continues to be the fastest and easiest way to place your wagers, including live betting and your favorite casino and card games available to play right from your phone. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and get in on the action. Remember to use our promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet online, where the game starts.